Hello, and welcome to the Weshtern Philosophy Podcast. Two friends with oceans and oceans discussing the unseen forces in our lives through the lens of music, mystery, and crack. In today's episode, we discuss the power of dreams and end up with a demonstration of this power as Bart enters the dream world himself in a wonderfully real way. The interesting thing about the dream world is that our conscious mind, we can't really control it. We can't control dreams. And that's maybe a little bit why they're scary. And that's where the quote at the start, that Yeats quote, "In dreams begins responsibility," I find really interesting. Because when you are stripped of your ability to self-censor and control, is that what he's talking about? Or is he talking about these aspirational dreams as well? Whereas as soon as you start to desire something, you have to take on the responsibility of the consequences of that desire. But that idea that maybe the most important part of the action begins in the dream world before it enters the real world, I find really powerful. All right. Modern wa of art. Good morning.
Hello.
Hello. How are we doing?
Doing great. Did you enjoy it yesterday when we were trying to come up with band names, Osquailga? And I was like, I have no Irish, so I'm going to tell you all what the crack is.
You were the most prolific suggester of Irish band names. And
fucking nightmare.
I tell you, it goes to show what enthusiasm
Can wreck.
can do. Because we definitely unleashed something. So I think your first one was the grog yours, as like Gaelgores, but of love.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, it's so good. It was you really made me laugh as well. I was telling it to you because I threatened you over WhatsApp. I saw Anthony's typing. I was like, "No, Anthony, no typing. I've got the right name here."
Yeah.
Are the levels okay?
Would you drop your gain a tiny bit, please, brother? Because it's again, this is another side effect of enthusiasm: is that it makes
volume goes up.
It's beautiful, but it makes things clip.
Is that all right?
Yeah, I think that's great, man. But it was so funny because you texted that in, and then I started texting, and you were just like, "Anthony, don't you dare text! You stop typing right now." It was the most intimidating thing I've ever received over WhatsApp.
You're watching me while I type.
What do I do? So yeah, we don't have an Irish language band name yet. We have a few very funny suggestions. We have a few that we cannot repeat.
Oh no, the cancelable offences will not be mentioned here.
They'll only be released on our Patreon. That's it. Yeah.
Well, in that case, what we should do is say to people like, "What do you think it was?" And then you will get a great name.
And steal the best one.
Yeah, exactly. Isn't it funny with WhatsApp as well? That kind of the I think on iPhones it's the 3 dots, but it's like the typing, and then they stop typing. And you're like,
yeah.
Oh God!
What happened? Are they okay?
Is everything okay? Yeah. Have they decided they hated me? And then usually it's just like, oh no, WhatsApp.
My favorite one is, and it's not WhatsApp specific, but when somebody rings you and you miss the call, but you just miss it, so you immediately ring them back, and it rings out. Yeah. And you're like, what the fuck did they do? Did they ring you? You didn't answer, and then they just dropped their phone and ran off over the horizon.
No. It was just like, Anthony, I really need you because otherwise I'm gonna. And you were too late.
Yeah, well, that happens 5 or 6 times. It doesn't have as much impact. A friend of Katie's. Katie got a phone call from her friend's phone at like 1 o'clock in the morning, and it was like a man leaving a long, weird voice message, fairly obscene. And so Katie got in touch with her friend somehow in a non-phone manner. Got in touch with her, and she was just like, she was walking home from the pub. And her phone kept going off, and she'd stopped on the bridge to take a moment and enjoy the evening air, and her phone wouldn't stop beeping, so she just left it on the side of the bridge and walked away.
Oh, that's beautiful.
I love that.
What a good person.
And then somebody found it, and for some reason was able to ring Katie off it. But I love that idea.
That's a beautiful that could be like a little fairy tale story with modern technology.
And the phone was never heard from again.
Yeah, it puts me in mind of a ghost story. No, I don't have it ready. I'll look it up. But there was this one time I gave a few French people a lift to the Cliffs of Moher when we were still living in Doolin, and one of them left the iPhone in the back of the car. So I didn't realize it was still in the back of my car, and then I got into the car later in the evening and I saw it, and they'd rang it a million times, and the battery was kind of running low, and I was like, oh shit, because they sent so many texts as well that the previews wouldn't show properly. Right. Whereas if they had just gone a number, I would have rang that number, you know. But then I was just like, oh God, what do I do? And so I looked up online, like, how can you access a phone if it's locked and it's an iPhone? And they're like, oh, you can ask Siri to ring someone. But I was like, yeah, but who the fuck do I know? And I remembered the guy's name from being introduced, but it was so funny because it said like Le Petit Chef or something was the nickname he got in her phone. So I was just like, fuck, what is call in French? I think it's arrête or something like that. So I just went, arrête le petit chef, and it rang him. And I was like, oh yeah, I found the phone. Just send me on Facebook or whatever, send me the address. But I thought that was hilarious. Me just kind of going, this is my French voice. Let's see if this works. And it works. So
can I fool Siri?
Yeah.
My friends, I know they're together with 10 years, maybe more, and they're married 4 or 5. But they met walking home from the Rose of Tralee at like 3 o'clock in the morning one night. They just ran into each other on the street, and she put her number into his phone as your one from last night. And now 10 years later, she's still your one from last night in his phone.
Oh, I love that. It would have been bad if there was a million your ones from last night.
I know. Which one?
Which night?
Your one from last night, open brackets, blonde, close brackets.
Yeah, well, more like a open brackets date.
Yeah.
So I think we've inadvertently started a new opening for the podcast, which is just we just riff on some random shit.
We do. And see, the thing is, Bart, because I am ostensibly, and I don't know why, ostensibly in control at the start of the pod. Like, I feel
you like control, and I like this kind of being controlled. Apparently,
you like undermining control. So it's a perfect.
Oh, that's what it is. Yeah. Thank you. That sounds nice.
But I feel obligated to somehow tie our ramblings into the topic of the show. And if you have any ideas, I'm open to them, because our topic now is
from the invisible world of WhatsApp.
From the invisible world of WhatsApp from one cloud to the other. It's a reach. It's a stretch.
It's nearly there.
This is my responsibility, and in dreams begin responsibility. Do you know that line?
Has it just been invented?
No. It's a very famous line. It's by the great poet and founder of Microsoft, Bill Yates, and
he's got the dad jokes.
I do. The longer this preamble runs on, the worse it gets. But in dreams begin responsibility, and today's topic is dreams. It's a big one, Bart. Thoughts?
Bastard.
Yeah, okay.
Bastard.
You've got your wee book of notes there.
Yeah, but I spent very little time on it. Well, the notes. I think there's 2 types of dreams. There is the ambition kind of dreams, and then there is the dreams of expression of your subconscious. Would you agree with this, my lord?
No.
I'm just, we're both in a kind of a fucking prickly wanting to.
What I love about this topic is dreams is one of those. So English in general is a very specific language because it draws from 3 different sources. So like it's Old Germanic, Old French, and Latin, right? I think those are the 3 main roots. So what it means is that we have a lot of words, more than other languages.
And when you say we, you mean the oppressor.
The oppressors. They can overwhelm us with vocabulary. Yeah. But for example, we can say kingly, regal, or royal, and each of those has a different linguistic root. So you compare that to languages like Chinese, where there are actually very few sounds in Chinese, and there's fewer roots to the language, and it was standardized a lot longer ago. It was standardized over 2,000 years ago when the writing was standardized. So in Chinese, you'll find words that have just dozens, scores of meanings, because they meant one thing in the 3rd century and one thing in the 10th century and one thing in the 17th century. And because there's not that many sounds, they keep getting recycled. And you end up in this very interesting state where you always have to look beyond the word to the meaning. Like almost no Chinese word makes sense out of context. You need the context to show you the meaning. And we don't have too many words like this in English, but I think dreams is one of them. Like dreams can mean so many different things depending on context. So I think you're absolutely right. It can be aspirations. It can be that thing we see when we sleep. It can be our inner world. It can be our subconscious, and yeah, I love it.
Oh, that's really nice. Oh, nicely tied together there. I was still thinking on the language thing that it is funny that English also has a clear class thing, where it's like the example they always like when we were in the Netherlands learning French in school, we would talk like a chair is from chaise, or my French is garbage, so don't correct my pronunciation. And then stoel is the Dutch word.
Okay.
And stool is much like, to me, that's what I'm pointing at now. A nice chair is a chair, and a stool is more like a simple kind of thing that a farmer might sit on while he's milking a cow or something. So it's interesting that there's a class distinction as well. Whereas, like you say, in Dutch, it's just stoel.
Yeah.
That's just it.
Yeah.
So, but interesting that dreams isn't one, yeah. And I think you and I are probably interested in the subconscious element of dreams.
Well, okay. Well, so if we're going to talk about that, when you close your eyes at night, when you drift off and you see things, is that your subconscious?
I would think so. Yeah, I would think so. Usually, for me, it is. Like nearly quite often there will be a glimmer of a thing where I'm like, oh yeah, that's something I need to deal with.
Yeah.
Sometimes, very rarely, it will just be like, oh no, that was just a nice story. Like it happens sometimes. Like a couple of weeks ago, I was just like in a university with a friend of mine, and we were just trying to sort something out, but it was very low pressure, and that was the whole dream. And I was like, that was lovely. I woke up in a good mood. It's like nothing was going on. But usually it's more like, oh, this thing that I'm uncomfortable with, or oh, it's that, or and yeah.
Yeah, there's so much there, because I get a lot of these, like Katie calls them like my vaguely inconvenienced or like vaguely agitated. No, what's it? Vague inconvenience dreams, where I'll like buy a ticket for the cinema and then I'll turn up, but I've bought it for the wrong time, and then like I'll go and then the ticket seller like won't accept it, and I'll have to go back to the desk. But now the film is running late, so I have to like I will dream about that for like 2 hours in dream time.
Yeah,
and like Katie will be dreaming about being a post-apocalyptic vampire hunter or something like that. But,
that makes complete sense, yeah.
But I also get the mad dreams as well. But let's see if Blarney kicks off now.
No, we're okay. And the postman didn't open the door, so we're okay.
Did he knock? Hold on a second.
No, he's in the van. You're okay. Yeah.
All right.
Sorry to make this even more chaotic of a start, but sure, we have to deal with. Someone is sawing down trees as well nearby, so it's just like this is the energy we're going with.
It is, but I think. Okay, so the interesting thing about the dream world is that our conscious mind, we can't really control it. There's lucid dreaming and stuff like that, but in general, we can't control dreams. And that's maybe a little bit why they're scary. And that's where the quote at the start, that Yeats quote, "In dreams begins responsibility," I find really interesting, because when you are stripped of your ability to self-censor and control, is that what he's talking about? Or is he talking about these aspirational dreams as well? Whereas like as soon as you start to desire something, you have to take on the responsibility of the consequences of that desire. But that idea that the maybe the most important part of the action begins in the dream world before it enters the real world, I find really powerful. And then I would say, is that all the subconscious? Or is there something else? Is there a relationship between the conscious, the subconscious, the collective unconscious, channeling, is everything that happens in your dreams you? Or is there another factor there?
Oh, God.
Keep drinking your coffee.
Yeah, I'll wake up.
It'll start making sense, Bart, I promise.
No, well, what you just said about like that once you start desiring something, that's where the responsibility comes in. I have a sense that maybe what it also is I think our most powerful way of manifesting, and I don't mean manifesting in necessarily. Sure, by this point they all know how woo-woo I am, fairly woo-woo, but I'm not talking about it that way, but just more like I think our power to bring something into the world is at its most powerful usually when we are in alignment with a very deep-seated desire, and not like a superficial kind of derailing kind of whim desire. I want a cookie or something, but when it's like, oh, I have a great hunger to play music, or I want to help people, or when there's that kind of desire, I think it's when we are most powerful in the world. It's when the most kind of things happen, when we align with that. But then I suppose that is also when you are bringing the most force to bear on the world. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if you're thinking about this, but I am thinking about your dream to move to Ireland and the responsibility that came with that. And
yeah, that's definitely where there was an intersection of well, also responsibility gets tricky when there's different needs on different sides, because I've the feeling for me to want to come to Ireland, that dream has always been so strong, and like there's a big hook in my diaphragm just and even when so I was living in Galway from like 2009 to 2012. Then I met the wonderful lady that I'm married to right now when I was back home on Christmas holiday, and we had a few dates and it was all lovely, but I was like, no, I'm going back to Ireland. That's where I live. And I just gotten it was a couple of months after coming out of a big relationship as well, so I was like, sorry, love, I'm going back. But then I was smitten, so it was useless. Like that draw then became stronger than the other draw, and I realized she wasn't ready to move to Ireland yet.
On Ireland with Yvonne.
You were making light, but this is a very serious. Like I wrote one of the first songs I wrote was about Ireland as a woman, and she did not like it.
Who's this Aisling bitch?
No, thank God I didn't give her a name, but it was like...
Well, that's a poetry tradition where you write poems about Ireland as a woman, and they're called Aislings because...
Oh, because that's the dream, right? Or
I'm not actually sure, but the type of poem is called an Aisling.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
You
That's
personify
hilarious.
Ireland as a woman, yeah.
But that didn't go over too well. But then in all the time, like it was very clear my priority was like, no, I really want to be in Ireland, but I need to be with her. Like that was a clear prioritization. But then I went back to the Netherlands, and I was I was really happy to be with her, because when I was in Ireland without her, that didn't really work. This is awful personal, but sure, that's always a good get out clause when you're staring into the void of the topic. But so we were there, and it took me a while to settle back into life in the Netherlands. But then I did find, by doing more music and going back into my passions, making theater, meeting nice people there, it kind of relaxed. But the pull was always there. And she knew as well it was something that needed to be dealt with. Then we had our lovely children, and then I always left it up to her, because I was like, otherwise it's going to be a problem, She's like, yeah, you won't rest until this has been at least attempted. But that is where the responsibility, where the rubber really hits the road. It's like you've small children, you're bringing them over to support my dream, really. Now, like, it's not just my dream. Like, there was a lot of things here that Yvonne loved as well. And I always had an image of that working really well for her, because she's someone who loves community, who loves nature, who loves a slower pace of life, But I definitely found that when your dream needs to become a reality, then it's suddenly like, okay, well, here we are, and what are you going to do about it? And is it... I wrote another song about that, actually, where it was like, am I right to do this to my kids as well? Because they're completely in your power.
Yeah.
Especially at that age.
I find your level of consideration amazing because, and appropriate, to be honest, but still very admirable. But I think about, we're entering this world of AI and stuff like that, and these big people out there looking to change the world in their, just whatever they think. You know, they're just like, I want this, I want that, I want to affect the lives and the futures of tens or hundreds of millions of people. And they have these dreams, but I don't think that they have the responsibility. I really think that there's this idea that our dreams are enough. You know, that if you have this dream, you're like, oh yeah, I must pursue it. Like you've got that hook in your diaphragm. It's like, I just have to go to Ireland. But there is that other side of it as well. And I think it almost makes dreams more powerful when you accept the responsibilities that go along with them. When you're like, okay, this is not just a nice little thing I want. This is something I'm bringing from the dream world into the real world that is going to change my life and the lives of my families and those around me. And that dream world is important. It's not something you toy with. It's not something you do for like a bit of fun.
Yeah, and there's a lot of things there. It's putting me in mind of Terry Pratchett a lot, what you're saying there. He has a lot of quotes about the tinkerers, you know, about like these people who just won't leave well enough alone. And I think he believes, as I believe, that that is just an inherent human quality. What's that funny one where he's right, like if someone made an end of the world button and put it in a cave and wrote like don't end of the world button, don't touch, the paint wouldn't even be dry before someone pressed it, you know, because there is just that endless urge of just trying shit out and see what happens. And I think then I think in Raising Steam, or one of the last books he wrote, I think the Patrician has something about this where he's just like, what does he call them? Do you know what he calls them? Like maybe he calls them tinkerers, but it's about, because that book is about trains coming into the world, you know. But he's just like, these effing people who just can't stop making devices just to see if they can do it and don't think about the repercussions at all. Yeah, that's Silicon Valley to me in a sense. Yeah.
And I don't think it means don't do it, by the way, but I do think it means consider it. And actually, now that I think about it, that was a bit of a theme in Terry's work at the end, because you had Going Postal with well, it started with, I think, The Truth, where it was the invention of the printing press and what that does when you can actually print a newspaper, and the truth is no longer an amorphous thing, but is now whatever has been printed, you've set it down, and the power of that. And there's definitely, who's the main character in The Truth in that?
Oh, it's William the Word.
Yes, yeah. And it's about the responsibility of that. And then Going Postal is about semaphore and the ability to transmit information over long distances and the effect
kind of internet technology. Kind of vibes.
And then what was it? Pushing
Raising Steam,
yeah. So,
and there's even, I'm even thinking now of I know we're becoming close, awfully close to going into one of our favorite realms of fantasy, but there's that one thing as well where they have this vampire who's a press photographer, you know, Otto Schreck, and he there is some kind of inconvenient thing going on with the watch, the local the police kind of force, and he just takes the pictures, and I think Vimes, the commander of the police, kind of goes like, you know what this is going to do if you print this, and he's just like, people have a right, and it's nearly as if the person who does that thing, like the tinkerers, and maybe like journalists in a way sometimes as well, it's like irregardless of what this is gonna do, and maybe that's the way it should be, because we have seen in the last couple of years that when journalists start to decide what is right and wrong news, it gets very murky. I think
this is where journalistic ethics comes into play, but we're getting a little off topic here, but that idea of respecting or taking responsibility for the dream, I think is
because really I think what you were saying, like the motive force of a dream is so strong that it's nearly like I'm gonna have to do something with this.
Yeah.
And for me, the to keep it close to home, the dream of coming to Ireland was one where I knew if it wasn't attempted, it would be a real issue.
Yeah.
It was just like if I because I gave it a good couple of years. I gave it like 7 years, which is an epoch kind of, or not an epoch's not the right word,
Mini
but you know,
epoch.
like 7 years is a kind of nearly like biblical time span, you know. Yeah. And you see it with recessions and then booms and that kind of thing. But I knew if I it's something to reckon with, because I knew if I was like this strong pull is inside me and I'm going to ignore it, it would have been destructive to me.
Mm-hmm.
But then you're like, okay, so I'm going to enact it, but how do I do that responsibly with everyone around me? And it changes, like that motive force in us changes everything around us. So I do think that quote is very apt. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you know the story about Paul McCartney writing. Oh my God, we'll take that again. You know that story about Paul McCartney writing Yesterday, that he woke up in the middle of the night, and he has apparently at that time he had a grand piano next to his bed because priorities, and he just like hammered out the chords, and he asked one of his wife, he's like, "What is this?" She's like, "I don't know." He's like, "No, what is it? Where did I hear this?" She's like, "I don't know." And he apparently went around for like 2 days playing it for everyone. He dreamed about it. Like it came to him in a dream. He's like, where did I hear this? And everyone's like, "We've never heard this before, Paul." He's like, "I guess I wrote it then."
Well, this is the thing with channeling and stuff and creativity that we were kind of talking about in the last episode. It is a very similar story with Tony McManus's lovely dad-gad guitar player, and he tells a story about a friend of him writing I think it's called the Sleeping Tune. Yeah. And he just like, what was it? Him just being blind drunk. And
no, they had an all-night session in a pub.
Yeah.
And they just passed out. They were drinking until like 5 a.m, and they literally just passed out on the floor of the pub. And apparently at like 7, his friend rolled over, and his friend it was written for uilleann pipes originally. Yeah. And can you imagine this? 7 o'clock in the morning, you've slept on the floor of a pub for 2 hours.
And the loudest instrument known to man.
Writes over it. And that was it. The tune had come to him, and it's a spectacular tune on guitar. Tony McManus's version is one of my absolute favorite pieces on ever written on guitar. Actually, I think it's stunning. But that came to your man, the piper, like during a drunken stupor.
And then it kind of comes to what you were saying, that these dreams, are they really us? Mm-hmm. Or are they really ours? Or is it actually a shared thing? Or is it coming from elsewhere? Mm-hmm. Like that Paul McCartney story is really clear. He's like, no. This already exists. I'm only bringing it into the world. Yeah. I'm birthing it, but it already exists. Or he couldn't even believe that he was birthing it. He's like, no, someone must have found it. So there is something. Don't you find when you get a bit older, we're not that old yet, 87 boys.
87 boys.
But that it's the unseen world really becomes much more real. I was listening to an audiobook of some. What was I listening to? I was actually listening to Stephen Fry's lovely rendition of Harry Potter. Hadn't listened to it for a long time, and I think he just does a beautiful job. And it's interesting because, you know, you and I are both mad about the Lord of the Rings, and then I suppose Harry Potter is like a newer, very prevalent myth. And it was interesting to leave that a couple of years and go back to it and see, how does that hold up? And I definitely think it's less deep of a myth than the Lord of the Rings, but there's definitely some powerful themes in it. But then there's, those books get increasingly darker. And then I really felt like moved by bits of it, especially when it's about parents having to abandon their kids or die for their children or something like powerful themes. And I felt myself being moved. And I suddenly realized that whereas a few years before I probably would have gone, yeah, Bart, but it's only a story. There was something now where I even said it to Yvonne, I think, where I was like, no, it's the truth. It's just not specific truth or something, but maybe it's actually greater truth.
Yeah.
something like that. And I think this is the way with dreams as well, because sometimes you wake up and you've had a lovely dream and you wake up like, oh, I've just been walking in a meadow, you know. And sometimes you're coming out of the horrors and you're kind of going, oh, geez, thank God I'm waking up to this dimension now. Mm-hmm. It's nearly like you've actually traveled through a different world and come back. I find all that stuff becomes much more real to me the older I get.
So now I have a question for you, Bart.
Go on.
Are you a man dreaming he's a butterfly, or a butterfly dreaming he's a man? Do you know this quote?
Yeah.
Oh, Pratchett. Actually, Pratchett uses this in...
What is his version?
In Thief of Time. Yeah, he's very dismissive.
He probably has a version that I can relate to more easily.
Yeah, Lao Tzu uses it. But no, this is Zhuangzi, the great Taoist sage, and he writes about the power of dreams. You know, and he's like, he went to sleep one night and he dreamt he was a butterfly moving from flower to flower under the sun, living a beautiful life. Then he woke up and he's like, am I a man dreaming I'm a butterfly, or am I a butterfly dreaming he's a man? And does it matter?
Yeah. There is a beautiful, it's always great when I end one of your stories with, yeah.
Yep.
It just means.
That's fucking Zhuangzi for you. Anyway.
Which just means
sounds like something he'd say.
Nothing
all right.
is firing. Like, it literally feels like there is a blank screen on my forehead, and I'm just like, nothing is firing this
found.
morning. But there is a beautiful Dutch comedian, Herman Vinkers. He's a wonderful man and really lovely, sensitive dude who started off life mainly with a lot of puns and stuff like that, and then he got some kind of leukemia. Is it like chronic leukemia is the one where you can have it a long time and you just have a white blood cell issue? Anyway, so he's been basically terminally ill, but for the last 20 years, and it's going okay, but it's a slow, you know. And he got a lot more insightful, and he has this story about dreaming that he's waking, and then dreaming that he's waking again. And he has this whole thing about if death is maybe just another waking that we have, you know. I do not have the answer to whether I'm a butterfly dreaming I'm a man, or a man dreaming I'm.
Well, in the Terry Pratchett book, I think Lao Tzu responds. He's like, "Do you have any pressing desires to like gather nectar or stick your proboscis into flowers?" And the guy goes, "No." He's like, "You're probably a man then." But like, I've certainly had dreams. Okay, dream analysis. I wouldn't even call it dream analysis. That's more of like a Jungian, Freudian thing. But dreams as a diagnostic tool is a very, very deep part of Chinese medicine, and has been there since the start. Now, it's not something I practice an awful lot, because I think a lot of them are cultural touchstones that probably don't cross, 2 millennia and half the world, Just things like, if you dream of white mushrooms under a sycamore tree in January, you'll be dead in 3 weeks, kind of thing, So very, very specific. But if you take a step back and look at the shape of dreams, certainly I find in the clinic there's a very useful broad diagnostic criteria. And there are other categories, but I think these are the two main ones. And I call them narrative dreams and abstract dreams. So there are dreams out there which are narrative dreams. So what that means is they'll have a beginning, a middle, and an end. They'll have characters. They'll have consistency. And for me, that means they're associated with the heart and the conscious mind. Then there are dreams that are what I call abstract dreams, and they will have no consistency, no linearity of time. Characters will morph into each other, and they'll be working more on dream logic. And I say that they are more the realm of the liver and the hun, or the ethereal soul, which is the aspect of mind that lives outside of the body in Chinese medicine. So the mind is split into 5, and one of these is the hun, which lives outside of our body. So, and then either of those can be emotional or unemotional. And I find that really, really useful for parsing through dreams. I get both, but I will find that in my experience, the narrative dreams feel to me like my brain doing a bit of housekeeping, like going through the house and saying, hey, where does this go? Deal with this. Just take a look at that there, you know?
Yeah, it's like processing.
Yeah, and like literally it feels like tidying things away into drawers and like wiping down countertops and so on, which can be the unemotional. And then the emotional thing is like when you're revisiting a thing that happened or something like that, and you're like going through it, or a person. So one thing that I had was I had a very, very rough falling out with somebody, and I sent them I had a rough falling out with somebody that I felt very badly about. And one day I just had a dream where it was okay. Oh. And I woke up and it was okay. And like that literally measurably changed it within me. And then like a few months later, when I felt the time was right, I sent like one message to them and just being like, hey, this, you know, and kind of tied the bow on it. But like it was resolved for me in that moment, you know. So these are the conscious dreams, the narrative dreams. This is often
the way, isn't it, that if we resolve it within ourselves, the external, it's not unimportant, but it becomes less important.
Secondary.
It's not, yeah. And do you have like recurring dreams?
At periods in my life, I have had recurring dreams, but they have been more abstract. So, yeah. For a long time I actually won't go
grand.
there. Yeah, but how about you?
I'll tell you, because one thing that actually, I have one recurring dream about me being in some spooky kind of house, but that's not very interesting. But that seems to come back. But there's two types of dreams I get a lot through, or not a lot, but they always come back, and they're about great stress. And the funny thing is, no, three types actually, but they're all like, there's like three expressions of extreme stress, and one is like kind of leaving cert, not having prepped for your leaving cert.
That's a classic.
So that's a classic. Yeah. Then another one is being in the bar, the aforementioned bar that's been mentioned so often, and just like being completely swamped, which I did always find very stressful, like when you're on your own, and it's like you're doing snacks for people, you're doing drinks for maybe 60 people, and they keep ordering, and you're just swamped and running around. So that's one that comes back. And then there's the one of having to do a play without learning my lines properly. So I don't know what that means, but it's nearly I say it because it's nearly kind of an in-between one. Like it is narrative, but it's also like it's one of those ones where you wake up panting nearly. You go, oh, thank God, I'm not doing that. Even though they're not necessarily, I haven't had terribly negative experiences in those things.
I would say if your brain keeps throwing a dream at you, then it's like it's either like a computer trying to like open a file that's too big, or it's like a fucking warning light, you know. And what I do is I write them down. We've kind of talked about this. What I find when I write down dreams, and a lot of people talk about dreams, like it's great to wake up in the morning and chat to your partner about your dreams. That's really fun. But over time, I'm starting to feel that maybe your dreams belong to you. And I'm not saying don't talk to people about them, but I am saying if you're trying to turn your dream into something, alchemize it into something that is of use or affect the change the dream is trying to give you, it just might be better to engage in that on your own. Because I think part of what dreams are telling you is that you have the answer. Like, I think if you didn't know at all, you wouldn't be getting the signal. So, and that's where dream journaling comes in. And definitely I find myself, if I'm having a dream like that, and we've talked about this, but like, I'll write down the dream in as much and in longhand as well. I used to type them out on my phone. Doesn't work. I don't know why. It just doesn't work. It's pen and paper. You sit down, you start writing, and what I'll find is when I'm finished, about 30% of what I'm written will be the dream in as much detail as I can remember, and with as much of my response and my reactions to the dream as I can imagine, or as I can remember. And then the rest of it just keeps coming. And it's other stuff that wasn't in the dream, but comes out when I start to write, not speak, write about the dream. And I find that very, very, very useful.
Isn't it mad that the writing is different than the typing?
Yeah.
Because if you look at it kind of in a technical kind of way, it's they're both just instruments of technology.
Yeah.
But I found this, like you advised me to do this recently. We were talking about it this morning with something that kept coming up in dreams, where I thought I was fine with the situation, and then it kind of keeps coming back. And you were like, write it out, and it 100% works.
Yeah.
And you really get some clarity, and quick as well. Like two tiny pages I wrote, and then it was at the end. It was like, oh, we're through the door.
And it was interesting because you were like, I have this thing about X, and you started writing about it, and Y and Z came up.
Exactly, and it was about a much bigger theme.
Yeah.
That the situation was only the tiny trigger for it.
Yeah.
But it is mad that it is different that way. I had a really good friend who passed when I was young, and she was keeping a dream journal. And when she died, we were about 16. Her mother actually lent me the dream journal, which in hindsight wasn't great, I think, privacy-wise. But I was sure I was so eager for any connection with her, so I read it, and it was nice. I was in a few of them, which was nice, which was kind of nice to. That was, supposed what I was looking for as well, that you get a bit of that connection. But yeah, I was dreaming of her recently as well, because it was a big anniversary of her passing, and that's another thing with what we were saying about the dreams, or what I was saying about dreams seeming real. It's like, sometimes you can really hang out with someone in a dream, and you're like, "Oh, that's lovely." I had it with my grandma one time as well, where it's like, "Oh, nice, got to hang out, get a bit of quality time," which is, I don't know what that is now, if that is souls colliding in the unconscious or what that is, but it's kind of beautiful. It is kind of beautiful.
Yeah, I've had that with a grandparent that passed as well, and I don't think it matters what it is.
No.
That's because dreams work on dream logic, and even to go back to the thing you were writing about, the XYZ thing.
Yeah.
Like, we only talked about it briefly, but I personally, from the outside, can't really see a linear connection between X and Y.
Yeah, that's
and
funny.
Z.
That's funny, yeah.
But through dream logic, on an emotional level, on a processing level, that connection is there for you. And like, I don't need you to explain it. Like, it's there. And I think maybe that's why I'm a bit funny about dream interpretation as well. I think you have to hold it really loosely. I think it's a really powerful tool, but one of the powerful things about dreams is that they don't work by our rational logic,
And then sometimes they fucking do.
Yes.
Sometimes you dream and you go, "Oh, this is the problem."
Yeah.
"Oh, thank you for this." It's nearly like a fucking, what do you call that in Dutch? You call it a virtue tale. What is it? A moral?
Like an Aesop's fable. What's it? A morality tale.
Yeah, morality tale. Yeah, it's nearly like, in your dream you were doing this and that happened. What do you think the lesson is, ladies and gentlemen, or children? Really, it's so funny, but it's great that way. I'm dreaming so much more now than I ever was before, because I remember reading a couple of years ago when they were someone wrote like, "Oh, you dream every night, but you just don't always remember," or something. I don't know. They must have done some tests with people, just that there is
the electrodes and brain activity.
Yeah, but these days nearly every night. Nearly every night. Not like you were saying. Sometimes when you have those where it feels like it was a couple of hours in dream time, and apparently that's only, what is it, a couple of seconds or something.
You see, again, I reject that. I don't care what the fucking electrodes say. That's so. Why would you take the vast and colorful and powerful, as we've said, the dream world is powerful. Why would you take all that power and then just go, well, actually what you are is like in cycles of REM and alpha, beta, gamma, and
yeah, there seems to be some kind of controlling narrative going on there. I don't mean in a necessarily like societally, like in a super dark way, but more like putting things in boxes.
Exactly.
Whereas actually, I don't know, I think we might have talked about this when we were talking with John, but like, I found it super interesting with the Dutch doctor Pim van Lommel, who is interested in the near-death experiences, or kind of proper death experiences, people coming back from death with electroshock or something, that he was like, there is nothing showing. These people have huge experiences while they're gone for a couple of minutes, and all the sensors go, no, there's no brain activity. He's gone. So that kind of shows that it,
Yeah, and like I don't reject the science. Like I'm
No.
sure that like I don't know the specifics of it, but REM cycles and different sleep states and things like that. And I'm sure dreams, you can see the brain firing for 10 seconds and it can feel like an hour. I'm sure that's all true. I just don't think it's useful. And I just to most people, like it also undermines the power of the dream world when you're like, well, actually, that was only 10 seconds of your brain going zzz.
yeah.
Like, no, I lived another life there.
Yeah, well, it's even what you were saying with the butterfly and the man. It's that kind of thing when people are like, how do I not know that I'm just a brain in a vat
Yeah.
or something? I'm like,
Yeah.
just piss off with your
Yeah.
reductivist shite.
I read a beautiful quote about that, and I need to. It's in that big thick book over there.
But be too hard to find. Oh,
But I need to. I will find it and send it to you because it is because basically there's just. Oh no, it wasn't. It was a Zhuangzi quote.
Hey, we're back.
Brilliant. Bring it back round, boys and girls. So, Zhuangzi and his friend. What was his friend's name? I'll call him Zhouzhi. Okay. Z means master.
Yeah.
Right. So if you have the suffix z, it means you're a master. It also means child, which is quite nice. It's one of those Chinese words that has the two. So Lao Tzu means like either the old master or the elderly child.
Brilliant.
So
I love that.
Anyway, Zhuangzi and Zhouzhi, his friend, are walking along and they're crossing the Hao River, okay? And they stop on the bridge and they're looking over at the water and Zhuangzi goes, look at the minnows, so joyful or so happy in their environment, swimming and playing. This is the joy of fishes. And his friend goes, what do you know about the joy of fishes? Like, how can you say that? And Zhuangzi goes, you're not me. So how can you know that I don't know about the joy of fishes? And his friend goes, yeah, I'm not you, so I certainly don't know what you know, but you're also certainly not a fish. Yeah. So how can you know anything about the joy of fishes? And he's like, you know that I know about the joy of fishes because if you knew I didn't know, then you wouldn't have asked me about it. And I know because I walked over the river How.
Boo. Oh, that's beautiful. I love that. And I love the idea of the master and the child.
Yeah.
That's another Terry Pratchett thing, isn't it? Where the abbot is turned into a baby.
Teeth are the worst. They're always coming or going. Yes.
He's in reincarnation
But I love that idea of embodied knowledge because there is just some stuff you just fucking know. Like, you just know. And, like, you're like, oh, well, what if we pull it apart? And what if we do this and this and that and that and that? And you're like, okay, well, you're using the wrong tools for the job, first of all. Like, I don't think that jamming a few electrodes in somebody's head actually tells you that much about the dream world. And then to reduce it to that and then, well, how do you know you're not just, like, one, we just know because we know. And secondly, does it matter? This is the other side of the Zhuangzi quote about the butterfly and the man is, does it matter? You are as you are now. And every moment you are reborn and the whole universe is destroyed and the whole universe is recreated. Yeah. So when you're in the dreams, you're in the dreams. And when you're in the real world, you're in the real world. And,
and they're 100% part of experience. And such a big part of our experience, kind of weird not to take it seriously because it's like a third of our lives is spent in the dreamscape.
Yeah.
Which is like, but we focus on it less than we do on our 2-week holiday.
I know. It's wild.
And then there's also that thing of like, having to categorize things and make them into small boxes. It's like, it put me in mind when you were saying like, when you know. I sometimes have discussions with my partner about this. Like, sometimes I will see a person and I would just go, oh, there's this. It could be like, oh, let's stay away from that person because there's something going on. But it could also just be, oh, I can see this thing. And she will quite often, and this is probably healthy because she's a psychotherapist, so it's probably good that she's
probably
not as,
to her,
that she's a bit like, you don't know. And I say, you don't know, I don't know. No. but it's like, but I feel 100% in my body. I'm like, no, I've seen this kind of thing. I know, and then if you would have to put it into a diagnosis or something and people go, oh, this is that kind of blah, 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 blah. It all becomes very small, but it's like, no, our bodies are picking up so many little bits of information. And if there's a certain set of them that we've seen before, we know.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Well, what I've written here now is just Rachel Lavelle, because it's a really good album. It's called Big Dreams. So
Nice.
yeah.
I written down Dreaming My Dreams with You by the Cranberries. So we brought it back to music.
Yeah.
You know what's interesting, man, is that usually when we're talking about things, and you usually nail down a final topic, and I really start things start firing. It's nearly, I'm sitting here now, I'm nearly like, what's going on? But I nearly feel like I'm in a bit of a dream state, funnily enough. When we're talking about, I don't know if I just told myself, oh, dreams, and then, but yeah, this might nearly be a dream in itself.
Yeah.
Just sitting down with Anthony, and there's nothing particularly, there's very little firing for me.
Yeah.
And it's just like I'm just kind of floating.
Amorphous.
So
yeah.
it's funny how that, it's nearly like I jumped into a bit of a dream state.
I'm in a kind of a funny one because I've been reading a lot of Zhuangzi lately, and he has all these paradoxes. I'll give you one.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you to I'm going to name certain concepts,
Yeah.
and going to ask you, can you imagine them? Okay. Can you imagine the concept, the idea of something?
Yeah.
Okay. Can you imagine the concept of nothing?
Yeah.
Can you imagine the concept of not nothing?
No. No. Or
I love that. That's it.
I don't think so.
That's what I love about Zhuangzi, is those little moments where he just makes your brain hiccup.
Yeah.
Because something is not the absence of nothing. Something is the opposite of nothing.
Yeah.
What's the absence of nothing?
Yeah.
And
Well, it could be something, but it doesn't feel that way.
no, because I think what Zhuangzi is saying is that there was something before nothing and something. So, and this is what I think dreams are really good at, is this dream logic. We had a chat with somebody, a podcast listener. We ran into them in the wild, and they had a lovely comment. They were just like, I really appreciate the examination of non-linear thinking that we do on the pod. And I'd never thought of it like that, but I think that is a bit of the theme of the pod, is that we do not believe in A plus B equals C.
Yeah.
It is this non-linear thinking where there are strange connections between things. We move forward and backwards in time. And I think dreams are a beautiful exploration of non-linear thinking where, and this is also a Zhuangzi thing, where there's no difference between little and large, between near and distance. Zhuangzi highlights the importance of the useless and the small, because he's like, they're what make great, because great is only great in comparison to something. So the thing that you're comparing greatness to, the smallness, is just as important as the greatness, because it makes the greatness great. Stuff that makes no rational sense, stuff that is very difficult to work through linearly. And I think maybe that's why I was getting a bit annoyed at the idea of scientists doing research on sleep and things like that. It's not that it's not valuable, but it's a completely linear process. And I'm like, what dreams are trying to show you is a gateway to the non-linear. So why would you try to jam them into this linear process? And I think that might be where your brain is a bit at the moment, Bart.
Well, it's really funny because I feel quite relaxed, but it's just not. Usually when we're here, you're kind of in an active mode. And I feel I'm just in a really, I know it sounds like just a bit of a cop-out or something, but I'm a bit surprised at myself. I'm just feeling very floaty and a bit like, oh, I'll listen to what Anthony is saying, but there's very little happening on my
out in the dreamscape.
On my side. Well, I've noticed this as well sometimes, that you can, the energy that moves between people, sometimes you can really get into another person's state in a strange way, or you can connect, you can really connect to these big ideas and embody them a bit. I'm wondering if I should tell this story. Yeah, I'll keep it a bit. I was walking this weekend with an older gentleman who is he's a family friend basically, and he had a really wonderful marriage, but his wife passed because she had a brain tumor, and first sign was that she it all got the motor skills kind of went, and that was how they first knew, and she passed, and he was very sad, but he's also living beautifully and carrying her with him. But he has been really suffering from, like, he's a strong man. Like, even though he's in his 70s, very strong man. You could see, like, no bother to him. But he's been really suffering with things similar to what his wife was. And he's like, yeah, I've been to the neurologist, been to the doctors, all this. And he's like, yeah, nothing coming up. And I was thinking, like, yeah, maybe, like, you were taking care of someone who was suffering from that for a long time. It's nearly like you take that on. And that's a bit similar to what I'm experiencing at the moment. Just there's a big vacuum in my head where there is not. It's not that there's nothing going on, but it is very. Yeah, Anthony has basically made me trip.
Yeah.
What did you put in my coffee?
Well, I was chatting to somebody about foraging for mushroom. No, I was talking to a couple of people about quantum mechanics. And
as you fucking do, you pretentious prick.
I tied them up.
We're going to talk about this now, lads.
Got out my whiteboard. I didn't actually bring it up, but I do remember I lived with an astrophysicist in college during my undergrad, and I remember he had to do a presentation on basically you can experimentally verify that an effect can happen before its cause using quantum mechanics. So that's experimentally verifiable. It's to do with the wave-particle duality of an electron, and then you can collapse it, but the electron actually collapses before it should have the information about which one it is. So the effect, the collapse, can happen before the cause. We were talking about that, and another person at the table was just like when you're foraging for mushrooms and you start to trip even before you take them.
Yeah.
And it's like, when you get into that mindset of, the happy plant, and just thinking of the energetic of it can bring you back to that place.
Mad.
Yeah.
Oh, I've seen this with so many things. Also, when you were saying that about the electrode collapsing, the thing that just came into my dreamscape head was, I remember when all this will be again, which is one of my favorite Terry quotes. Is that the right? Have I got it right?
Yeah, I think you have.
It's the Reaper Man.
Reaper Man.
Remember when all this will be again.
Is that Azazel?
Yeah.
God, I love that book.
Yeah, it's so good. It's so good. We'll go back to the topic in as far as I can go back to anything because I'm not here really, but which is hilarious. I'm just gonna roll with it. Like I feel like I'm nearly like a guinea pig, but yeah, it shows that we are both at the same level of mad fans about Terry Pratchett books. When I just sent you like no crown, only the harvest.
Yes.
Is that it? And you just went, yes! That book is so good.
It's so good.
Jesus Christ.
But
I've seen, but this thing, yeah, of tapping into an energy before it starts. I do it now sometimes with music gigs. I'm driving in the car and I'm kind of connecting with the gig before it happens and maybe setting an intention for it. It's very powerful.
Mm. It is.
So, yeah.
You can't see this now, but Bart is levitating.
Yeah. And we're not going to measure it by anything that's quantifiable.
Do you know what? I'm going to keep going just because.
No. I'm actually now I'm over the hump where I was self-conscious about this. I'm now really rolling with it. So please carry on. I've not been in this state that I don't remember being in this state ever.
You're very brave to be drinking more of the coffee.
Well, I'm hoping it'll wake me up. It doesn't seem to be doing anything.
There's another Zhuangzi quote. A net is for catching fish. Once you've caught the fish, you can forget about the net. A snare is for catching rabbits. Once you've caught the rabbit, you can forget about the snare. Words are for catching ideas. Once you've got the idea, you can forget about the words. Where can I find a man who knows how to forget about words so I can have a few words with him?
Oh, that's nice and well translated as well, if I may say, as a translator, because that wasn't the original, I'm assuming.
No, and it's classical Chinese.
Yeah.
So very, very, they're saying one word has lots of meanings. That gets taken, like in classical Chinese, it goes actually even madder.
It's beautiful when people can do that. It's a real skill.
Yeah.
When people can still make it work in the other language. Yeah.
I'm kind of delighted that our exploration of dream and dream states has dissolved into a completely nebulous, non-linear, amorphous state.
Well, the problem is that my ego is going to come back in the door in a couple of minutes, and I will be apologizing profusely for what happened here, because I don't think this state is necessarily an audio medium.
I'm enjoying it.
Well, that's the main thing. But isn't it funny when you sit down to talk about stuff on a weekly basis, as we do, and we really enjoy, that the experiences are so different.
Yeah, there's a level of just kind of, I suppose, faith in the process or something, where we're like, because we did not plan dreams at all. Like, I've been reading about this, but like, I literally said it to you 5 minutes before we started recording, We're actually kind of thinking about half thinking about other topics. And you just have to start chatting and assume that stuff will come. Yeah. Excuse me. Bless my God, stuff was coming. But we don't plan these, and we have a rough idea of how long we want to talk for, which we've just hit, by the way, so we're all good. We're over the line. But yeah, it is funny. And I think it's the nature of these things that they are there and they are unseen. But like the dream world, they are very rich. They are very powerful. And they are influencing our lives. So I think once you start talking about any of these, there's more than appears on first glance.
It's just really interesting with this one that usually you grasp at a subject, and I really have this image of I grasp for a subject, like we were talking about ego or something, and I will just get hold of some kind of branch, which is a story or an experience that in my mind laterally relates to it or something. And with this, it's just like, grasping at fog. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't have anything pithy to say about this, because it is that nebulous thing. I'm only seeing like colors and stuff like that. It's
what
very,
colors are you seeing?
It's like it's like a nebula, kind of like a big space cloud of purple and stars, and it's nearly like you're trying to connect to source or something. Maybe that's what I'm finding with this. Is like, what is it? Well, maybe it is a connection to source or something like that, because it's too big for my brain to comprehend.
But I think all of our brains are a lot smaller than we think. And I think that's wonderful that we're given this path that can connect us to something bigger. And we can all do it. Well, I think some people apparently lack the ability to dream, but most of us can go there,
Yeah. Okay, we've hit the mark.
One thing I would say to wrap it up, and you tell me how this sounds, but like, what's your favorite songs or poems or movies about dreams or dreaming, Bart?
No.
Well.
No.
I think Bart and I need a bit of a lie down. So.
Fucking nightmare. We should not put this on a platform that's accessible.
Oh my God.
No, the one that came up for me was "Dreaming My Dreams," which is a song I haven't thought about in a very long time, and it's a very simple song. I'm even thinking to remember what "Dreaming My Dreams with You." Well, I think that probably ties back to what I was saying, that sometimes you can meet people in your dreams that aren't here physically anymore. Mm-hmm. And so that's probably my connection in terms of song to it, that it is nearly like a space between worlds where even the deceased can be come back into your world. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of songs that embody dream logic really beautifully. One of them is All Along the Watchtower, which I think is so cool because it's backwards. The verses are backwards. There must be some kind of way out of here, said the Joker to the thief.
Some kind of confusion, I can get no relief.
Businessmen, they drink my wine, plowmen drink my earth. All of them are along the line, none of them know what it's worth. And then the next one's no reason to get excited. And then the third verse is all along the watchtower, the princess kept the view, two riders came like.
Oh, okay, the story starts, yeah.
If you read the verses backwards, like last verse and then backwards, it tells a linear narrative of two riders approaching the tower.
Yeah.
The wind kicking up and them having a conversation. But Dylan, and particularly Hendrix, deliver it backwards.
Yeah.
And it has another kind of logic. It hits in a different way. It hits us like in an emotional, in a kind of dream
because we can't, probably because our brain can't really do that kind of boxing in thing.
Yeah. So
we're hitting the other place. It is Bob Dylan, right? Who wrote it?
Dylan originally, yeah.
Yeah.
And there's a really beautiful song called When I Was Done Dying, which was a dream, a guy called Dan Deacon, and he did have a dream. And what I love about that is the way the lines work. A lot of them, say you're reading lines 1, 2, 3. If you read lines 1 and 2 together, they have one meaning, and lines 2 and 3 together, they have another meaning. And it's a real kind of dream logic kind of thing where you can look at the same thing in two different ways. And it's got this mad, beautiful, ever-evolving, non-linear narrative. And very strong imagery and very emotional.
Is he Irish?
No, he's American. He's an electronic musician.
Because Done Dying kind of sounds it puts me in mind of Andreas Sestak has that story about Gilles Fiend, which I love, and then he's that thing where they're looking for the boat and it's gone, but he says like, and there is the Curragh, gone.
Yeah.
And I said it to him actually Sunday. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that idea. It probably has something to do with the Irish language, I suppose.
Yeah.
But I love that, like that the thing that was in the place, it was there not.
Yeah. And it was
there in absence.
It was louder in its absence.
Yeah, that's kind of what it's saying.
It kind of reminds me of that line from The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. It was like the two giant spaceships hung in the air in exactly the way that bricks don't.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah,
that's cool. I'm gonna see how I am after this.
Yeah.
If you read in the newspaper that something terrible has happened, I love you all.
Or that Bart has evolved into a being of pure light. It's going to be like the end of 2001.
Yeah. If I start a cult somewhere in the next week, probably don't join it. It's probably not going to be good.
Wait until next month when it's really set in stone. And
hopefully, my conscious mind will be back for the next episode. Thank you all for bearing with us. If our listenership drops off a cliff, Anthony, I take full responsibility.
Okay, and thank you, whatever parts of Bart's mind were present for the last half of this pod. This has been the Weshtern Philosophy Podcast, and our rambling exploration of and entry into the dream world. Follow us on all the socials at Weshtern Philosophy Pod. If you want to support the pod, you can buy us a coffee via the link in the description below. We'll be back next week with another topic. Shalom.